Today we're going to take a look at the Alkatronic. Hey guys, Devin with ReefDudes. Now today is kind of an exciting day because I finally got myself an Alkatronic, so today we're going to do a bit of an unboxing review. Now one really cool thing is actually not just I got one, my buddy Brad bought one as well. So we're going to actually be able to take a look at two of them on two different tanks. I think it's going to be really cool to kind of compare them to a certain extent and kind of see how they do on both their tanks, and it should be a really good way to give it kind of a good longer term review as well. But today we're going to get to this unboxing and kind of give it a first look and check it out. Ho ho ho! It is a beautiful sight. Alkatronic, super cool device. I've been following this online for a while. What this will do is test your alkalinity, up to a couple or as many times as you want per day. And you can either have it just monitor for you, or you can have it dose as well, which is pretty cool. So I'm probably going to let it monitor for a couple weeks, see how it does, and if everything's super stable with it, I may either A, adjust my dosing, or B, maybe let it dose for me. Okay, so once we open it, we have the unit itself. It's actually not bad size. I envisioned it being a bit bigger in this. So we got an Alkatronic. We have got a power supply. This looks like a hanging bracket. Got our instructions. This will be for calibration. I've got a little tube here. Alright, got another one for probably a larger calibration. Have a controllable wall outlet, which I believe is for a calcium reactor, but we'll find out. We got a USB cable, bunch of tubing. Looks like the check valve or a filter. Power supply, and I believe we got it all. And some calibration solution. Alright, so here is the Alkatronic unit itself. As we open it up, look inside, all packed up. We've got 4 different dosing pump motors. Now, I remember when I was reading other people's reviews, I've been following a lot of forums on Reef to Reef and other people for the last few months now, kind of seeing their experience with the Alkatronic. And one thing I thought was really cool is at first I know there's a few complaints that the motors were a little on the noisy side. And they sent out everybody that had the Generation 1 a brand new motor for free, just to kind of make up. So I thought that was really cool to see. So we got our pH probe. We got a couple different little pipes that will go in, so we'll have to calibrate this later. Testing container. So our little beaker, that will sit in there. Now looking at the side of the unit, we have a few different connections here. We have reagent in and water in. So this is your tank water, reagent in is going to be your premixed test solution, and wastewater out. Now from my understanding, you could also use wastewater. You can put it directly into the tank. I haven't decided if I'm going to put it into a container back in the tank yet. And the bottom two, we have alkalinity in and alkalinity out. So if you're using this to dose your alkalinity for you, this will go through your dosing container and back to your tank. Now below here we got BNC1 and BNC2. This would be if you want to hook this up to something like an Apex or a different aquarium controller to measure your alkalinity readings. So the instructions say to make sure you use this tiny little tubing in order for your input line. So for this, what I did, I actually had to use a drill bit, and I drilled up this little tiny kind of holder that was in there, stopping the tubing from going too low. So I did that, which is going to allow me to put this little tubing all the way down to the bottom. So it's going to be sucking from the bottom of the container, and I can still use this, and all my dosing containers will match. Now for this, to measure it out, since I'm going to be doing 1.5 liters, the concentrated solution does say to mix it 1 part concentrated solution of your reagent to 4 parts RDI water. So this is 1500 mils. So one out of 5 would be 300 mils, and it'll be 1200 mils RODI to 300 mils reagent. I'm also going to do this with a scale just to double check the measurements and make sure everything works out. So if you put your dosing container on it and you tare your kitchen scale, it will set to 0 grams. And now it should be about 1 mil equals 1 gram of weight. And that's the same for ODR water and for the reagent. So I'm going to fill this one up to 1200 mils and just make sure it works out to 1200 grams just to double check. And once that all works out, we'll add our reagent and get it mixed up. Now going by weight is often more accurate than going off a scale unless you have some pretty high-end lab grade stuff. There's going to be a bit of a margin of error, so measuring how many grams it is probably your best bet to make sure you have an accurate mixture. Now if for some reason you mess this up, you don't do the ratio correct, there actually is a way to do an offset within the Alkatronic software, which is pretty cool. So say I mix it up, you can test with the alkalinity test kit and tell it what the difference is between what the Alkatronic is testing, what your test kit is, and it can figure out an offset from that, and then it will kind of adjust its dosing accordingly to make it up so that you don't waste all that reagent you just mixed up. So we're at 400 grams. I'm going really slow at the end just because I want to make sure I don't go over. All right, 1500 grams on the dot, 1599. So it's just a smidge under 1500 mils on that, and I realize it's probably because I got liquid in this tube. So my theory is correct. It's just basically 1500 mils on the dot. It was slightly under because the water was also filling this tube. So good to know. I can pretty much just use these lines on the Alkamax dosing containers confidently. It's pretty much right on the money. My scale is bouncing between 1499 and 1500 grams. So I know my ratio is pretty much perfect. So I'm just gonna use this tube, give it a quick stir, make sure it's all properly mixed. So I decided I'm gonna use one of my old 1 gallon Space Saver containers as the wastewater container. So this can just tuck right underneath the back out of the way. And this is gonna attach to the waste out. Next we have our reagent, and this is gonna sit behind the machine. That line will attach to the reagent in. Now for our water in, we want to make sure you use this little micron filter on top of it, and it's going to go back in part of the sump, and we'll hook this up to the machine. So since I have the ATK sensor right against the back wall, it actually holds this little filter in perfectly just kind of on the edge of the bracket, which means it'll make sure it's always submerged, so that should work out quite well. So I make sure I leave enough line that it's still easy to pull it out and access anything. You want the lines to be as short as you can, but you still want that flexibility if you got to move it or slide something out of the way. Now we're setting up our pipes inside of this. We want to make sure everything's in the right position. So the first pump, this one is for your reagent. You can tell because it's connected to this little dropper hose. So we want to make sure that one's just at the top, and that's going to drop our reagent in for it to do the test. pH probe, we're going to insert that one in a minute once we get it all calibrated. And on the first one, B, this one is going to be sucking our water out of it. So this hose should be all the way to the bottom of the container. A is what's going to be taking our tank sample. So this one, if you push the rubber hose right to where it stops at the bottom, it should be sitting about 2 millimeters above the bottom, and you know you're just about perfect. So next what you want to do is download the app. Now on this, if you just use the QR code with the instructions, you can hover over it, and your device should give you a link to open it in your Google Play or your Apple App Store. And I've already downloaded it, so I'm just going to hit open. I've already created an account. Now how you know it's actually connected, at the top by Alkatronic, you'll see that little circle. As long as it's green, you know its Bluetooth is active. If your phone goes to sleep, it may lose that connection, so you may have to just reestablish it. Sometimes it's easier to just re-kill the app and open it and let it reconnect on its own. Okay, now at the very top, preparation, it says to prime pump. So start, we're going to prime pump A. It's going to start running, and we can see it start to fill up in the beaker. Now I just want to run it until we make sure all the air bubbles are out. Now if you want, you can try priming pump B, and this is going to be sucking the fluid out. So if we hit start, you can see it start to suck the fluid out, and I'm going to stop it. It's enough that I can see it running through the line, so we're good. Okay, now for pump C, we're going to prime this one. So let's start prime C. Now this should be for our reagent. Now I'm just going to let it run until I start to see a couple drips go through it. Everything is now primed. Pump D is for if I'm dosing alkalinity. Since I'm not dosing it quite yet, I'm not going to bother priming that for now. all of our tubes are full, everything's primed, and what we're going to do is calibrate the solution that's flowing through it and make sure it's the correct amount. So we're going to do pump A first of all, and this one's going to be to calibrate to 100 mils. So we're going to use our biggest graduated cylinder, and we're going to tell it to calibrate pump A. So we're going to calibrate pump A. When we say calibrate, we're going to let it run until it stops, and once it finishes, we're going to say how much solution actually got dosed. So finished dosing, if we look at the cylinder, we want to set this on the level surface, but we're around 52 to 53 milliliters. So let's set this down and double check. Enter 53 in here, hit enter. It says 53 milliliters and click save. All right, so our pump A is calibrated. So we're going to test pump accuracy, pump C, and test. Now you don't really want to use this as your main dosing. On a smaller tank, you can probably get away with it, but you still want to have your calcium reactor or your two-part, your bulling method, whatever you're doing is your main thing, and the Alkatronic is going to help stabilize it. So if it notices there's a big swing in your parameters or there's a big dip, it will kind of compensate and do some doses to go on top of that. Now, if it notices there's more than 0.2 DKH of a difference, it's going to make an adjustment, and then 2 hours later it's going to test and make another adjustment if needed. So normally it will test whatever you set for your interval. It could be anywhere from 2 to 12 hours. And if it senses it's outside of that range or something is off by more than 0.2, it's going to test every 2 hours and dose until it's corrected. So, and it won't do, I believe it's more a 0.3 DKH adjustment. So next we want to calibrate our pH probe. Only thing left in the puzzle here. So in order to do this, we're going to take it out of its protective solution in this holder, and we're going to swirl it around in some RODI water just to rinse off any of the solution that was on the tip. Just going to give it a light shake. Be careful not to smack it on anything, but to dry it off. Next, we're going to calibrate it using the pH 7 and pH 4 solution that came with it. So if we go back into calibrate on our app, there's the pH electrode and calibrate. So I'm going to tear open the corner of our pH 7 solution. Give it a little more of a shake, make sure we get all the RODI off of it, and put it into the packet. When I do this, I always do like to put it at a bit of an angle and also give it a few taps. This will help dislodge any air bubbles that might potentially be in there. And putting it in the corner, make sure it's fully submerged in solution. Now once I hit calibrate pH 7, if we actually look at the front of the machine, here pH 7 calibration, please wait 2M, so 2 minutes. All right, so pH 7 calibration, okay. All right, so that step's done. We're gonna remove this from our solution and give it a quick rinse in RODI to get any of that pH 7 solution off. So quick rinse, then shake the probe, insert the probe, same thing as before. I like to put it in the corner, give it a couple little swishes, a couple little taps just to get any air bubbles out. And next we're gonna hit the pH 4 calibration on our phone app. All right, pH 4 calibration, okay, perfect. Now inside this little container is a rubber O-ring. What I'm going to do is slide this on top of here, and I'm going to use this to hold the probe up just a little bit above that magnetic stir. This is kind of a safety so it doesn't potentially get smacked around inside of the container. When I tested with the HANA test kit, it was slightly high. It was 10.10 to 10.1-ish. I tested with the Red Sea kit, and I got about 9.8-ish. So just to double check, I recalibrated the Alkatronic, and this time I did it by weight rather than volume. So rather than me trying to measure exactly how many milliliters it is, I use a kitchen scale. And I measured the beaker beforehand, so I believe this one was about 77 grams, and the smaller one was about 29. So I remeasured with both of them on their own, and recalibrated it and used the measurement rather than millimeters. Now I think I'm in a lot better place. The last test I saw, it was 10.1, which is about right on the money. There we go, 10.18. So that's the number I like to see, because that lines up more in line with the other test kits. Now, at the end of the day, I mean, honestly, as long as this is calibrated correctly, I'm going to trust a $1,000 machine over a $40 test kit. So this is definitely, but it all comes down to make sure you calibrate it correctly. And I did it just by eyeball, and it was a little bit off. Then again, I did it by weight, and now it's pretty much perfect right on the money. So I do really recommend you guys do it by weighing the solution rather than doing it by your eyeball, unless you're super precise. But either way will get you there. This just seemed a little bit more precise for me. Overall, the build quality on this is absolutely fantastic. All the connections, everything are very solid. You can hook up a BNC connector to a controller. I may try hooking up to the Apex later. The only downfall is I'd have to lose my ORP probe or get another module, so we'll see, that may happen. Overall, these two are stepper motors, so very high quality pumps. These are just normal kind of dosing pumps. Now, my only one slight complaint is, as you can hear, I mean, it's a little on the loud side. Once it's in the stand, it won't be quite as bad, but it's not silent. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not silent. You would hear it. Now, there could also be stuff touching it, vibrating a bit, but that's my only one little complaint would be the pump noise is a little louder than I'd like, but I'm also OCD about silent. Overall, the fact that I can test alkalinity for you is absolutely fantastic, and that I know I'm kind of lazy reefer and I don't test it all the time, so having this automated is going to be amazing. Alright guys, so let's let this sit for the next day or so, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of see what the trend lines look like. When you first open the app, it will look and reconnect itself with the Bluetooth on the Alkatronic. It usually takes a few seconds. One of the biggest things to note, at the top, the Alkatronic logo, there's a little dot. You want to make sure that's always green. If you minimize the app or your phone goes to sleep, that may turn to red. And if it's red, it means it lost connection with the device. So if you do any changes, it might not actually save. So it's always good to make sure that little dot turns green before you make any changes on the Alkatronic. So far, the first few days, I let it test every 2 to 4 hours, tons of tests because I want to see how stable my curve was throughout the day. And it was actually very stable, which was awesome to see. Now, on this one, so now I've tested spread out to 12 hours because I'm trying to purposely let my alkalinity drop just because it's a little higher than I want it to be. It was around 10.5, I like it around 8.5 to 9. So I've been letting it drop. So I've turned down my dosing, I turned it off for a day or two, now I turned it down to about half of what it was and just kind of letting it slowly ease itself down. A couple things in the app, just the calibrate screen, obviously recalibrate your pumps. On the settings, aquarium volume, that's if you wanted to dose for you. This has an idea of how much to dose per your tank volume. Measurement interval, so currently it's 2 to 12 hours is the range. I heard there's an app update coming soon that's going to give you a few more options. Reference value, this is for alerts, so if I want it to alert me if it falls under or over a certain range. Once I get it all dialed in, I'll probably change it to 8 and 9. Action mode, if action mode's on, it will dose for you. If it's off, it will just test. Washout mode, that one is kind of like a fail-safe. If you are dosing 100%, turn this on. What it will do is if it does a test and it's more than 0.2 DKH off, it's going to retest this to confirm that's actually the right setting. It's kind of a fail-safe, just prevent from a potential test error. Baseline calibration, you'd use that if you ever mix up your solution and maybe you do the ratio wrong. You can test a couple test kits and kind of tell it what that value is, and it will use that offset to calculate it. That way you're not running out or potentially wasting some solution. So there's refill buffer bottle, refill reagent bottle. Now these you can kind of use for alerts if you wanted to let you know when you're out of reagent. If I tell it I've used 1500 mils and it knows how much it uses every test, so it kind of keep track. Wi-Fi, if you want it to upload your results online to the cloud. Now at the bottom here, the plug MAC address. So the smart plugs that you get with it, you can hook that up to like a doser or a calcium reactor type of thing. And if your alkalinity is say too high, then it can kill power to that solenoid. And you could use that to control your dosing on the calcium reactor, or you might even be able to do it on a doser, so your doser quit dosing. So it's a couple different cool ways you can do that. And that's all of our settings. At the same with prime hoses, obviously just fill it full of liquid if you're changing it. Test pump accuracy, every few weeks, month or so is probably a good idea to just retest the accuracy, make sure everything's still in check. And pH calibration, export list, you can email yourself a list of all your previous test results, and that can go back since it's been on. So far, really digging it. It's so nice to be able to automate test this. Like I mentioned earlier, my DKH was up to 10.5, way higher than I ever usually have it, but you know, that's what happens if you get lazy, don't test for a while, it just slowly creeps up over time. So pretty much amazing to have this automated, and I don't have to worry about it myself. Love it. I'll probably still test myself maybe once every month or so, just everything, just to make sure it's all in check and kind of double check it all. But so far, pretty sweet little device, and I'll keep you guys updated on how things go with it. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this, hit that like button, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next update.